actually take that new belief and go back through our entire life and make the changes that would have happened had we had a different belief. So people begin to see, oh my God, this has been running my life. This happened and that
Right.
happened.
Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project Podcast. I'm your host, Tenya Eickenberg, and this is a space where transformation begins. Welcome back to the Metamorphosis Project Podcast. Today I have with me Toni LaMotta. Is that correct? Did I say that correct?
Yes, you
Perfect.
did.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. The reason for this podcast is because I want other people to hear other people's journeys of healing, how they got there, what they used, because there are so many different ways for us to heal, for us to expand, for us to grow. And there's not one size fits all. So I love to give people the opportunity to share their gifts and what they use. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So get us started. How did you get into being who you are today, being this coach that you are today?
Well, I have a really interesting background and story. Many years ago, I spent 16 years in a Roman Catholic convent. And
Wow.
yeah, it was quite a journey, a wonderful journey, actually. But one of the things that happened while I was there, I took vows, and the vow of obedience taught me not to trust myself.
Oh, how
Taught me,
interesting.
if you think about it, it's follow the rules, listen to authority,
Right.
and your voice, it doesn't matter. And then, of course, when I left, I began exploring all kinds of other teachings and readings and taking courses. And I realized that I had shut down my own inner knowing. And so I went on a pursuit of how to find out. And over the years, I took many courses and studied with many wonderful teachers. And only recently, I have been coaching. I'm actually a New Thought minister. I ran churches, I've been counseling and coaching people for years. But recently, I started working with the Enneagram. I don't know if you're familiar with the
I
Enneagram.
have heard of that. Yes. Yes. I had someone on early on in my podcasting that had talked about it, but it's always
Well,
nice to have a refresher.
it's both a psychological tool to understand how your ego is structured and what are the things that, you try to do to get back to your essence and your divine knowing.
Hmm.
And it's a whole spiritual teaching. I actually was certified, and it was a 14-month program to certify us. So there's a lot of depth to it. But while I was teaching that, everyone who started coming to me was an Enneagram 6. And Enneagram 6s are the people who doubt themselves, who really don't trust anybody, but they're always looking for someone to trust. And I realized that wasn't just 6. I think there are a lot of people in the world like that. And I started to realize that's exactly who I was for all those years.
Oh.
And so I began a hybrid program where I started teaching all the things I had learned, as well as coaching the group of people, and not just Enneagram 6s, but that's my predominant
Right.
client, and so it's been fascinating. And you talk about healing. One of the modules that I teach is a program called the Art of Quantum Living.
Hmm.
And that program is about shadow work, not a popular term, but
Well, no, because that makes people look at the darker side of their life and what's going on in there.
well, instead of looking at the darker side, we like to look at it as learning to have compassion for what
Hmm.
you learned as a child.
I love
And
that.
so the 6-week program is really about it's very easy to do because you look at what triggers you during the day. Now, most of us have 101 things triggering us. The computer doesn't work right, somebody leaves something on the floor, whatever is going on.
Right. Right.
All the things that happen, email you get, And so we look at those triggers, and it's a 6 week program teaching you the principles and then doing 21 days of worksheets, looking at what triggered me. What was I feeling when I got triggered? What was going on in my body? And when else in my childhood did I feel that? And what happens to everyone is a memory pops in,
Hmm.
something we probably haven't thought about in years. And then we look at what belief did you form about yourself or about the world based on what just happened. And so we come up with, I'm stupid, I'll never get it right, nobody loves me, all those things that
Right. Right.
we we all pick up. And then we teach some neuroplasticity principles where you literally can change not the memory, you can't change what happened, but you can change what you made it, what you came to believe because of it.
Hmm.
And then we actually take that new belief and go back through our entire life and make the changes that would have happened had we had a different belief. So people begin to see, oh my God, this has been running my life. This happened, and that
Right.
happened. You know,
Isn't that so interesting that we're in a day and age now where we can consciously activate that part and understand and be aware of how these beliefs have transpired or how these beliefs have created the path that we were on. Not even realizing it for 40 years that this is what we were believing and this is what I mean, it's just I'm as an energy healer and a self-care coach, like I see that all the time in my clients, and they're just like I never noticed that that was a belief of mine. Or they first say, "Oh, I don't believe that." And it's like, well, if you really sit and allow yourself to feel that belief in your body, you'll see that you do believe it on some level. It may not be, maybe it needs to be worded differently or something like that, but that belief is still there. I mean, it's just amazing to me that, 20 years ago, this wasn't as mainstream as it is now.
it's wonderful, and there are lots of different ways. You might want to look up the art of quantum living, or
Yeah.
we can talk later. I can share some ways to learn the process because lots of people are using it with
Yeah.
their coaching
Yeah.
clients, and it just is so profound because the person comes to it on their own. It's
Hmm.
no one ever questions I had that belief because they're the ones saying, "Oh my God, I had that belief."
Yeah.
And then they can really see what it's done to their life. I have taught probably in the last year about maybe 160 people have gone through that program, and only one said to me nothing happened because he
Mm.
had a perfect childhood. So, you know,
Well, those are the ones who are really kind of blind to what was really going on and kind of created their own story in their head, which
it's quite
is
interesting.
okay. It's fine.
Well, he was of a different culture, and it may have been a cultural thing, and his mom had just died. So I think
Mm,
holding on to
right.
positive memories,
Yep. Yep.
and I can understand. One of the things that all of these things have taught me is how to be compassionate, not just with myself, but with everyone else. I mean, when you study the Enneagram, for example, you can't help but recognize, wait a minute, I have this pattern, and oh, I'm recognizing a different pattern in the other person.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
not who they really are. And so we have a great deal of compassion for one another, and it just makes life so much easier. And people always say to me, how do you tolerate all these different personalities? And I don't tolerate it. I actually applaud it because
Right.
I often see, for example, in the group of sixes that I work with, they have gifts that I don't have. So I can learn from them. I'm learning
Hmm.
from my clients every single day. And so when we learn to have a profound respect for each other, and that's how we heal.
Yeah.
I started realizing, I'm in the Enneagram terms a seven. Sevens are the positive outlook people who are always
I'm a
looking
seven.
for, yeah, like life is wonderful and let's have fun. We ignore pain, however,
Hmm.
usually. And so we want to see only the good. And so when I'm making a decision about something, I go to my six friends and say, what am I missing here? Well, have you looked at this? And what about that? This could happen. And, all the things that they're seeing as possibilities, which I don't want to look at, but I need to if I'm
Right.
making a valid decision. So we learn that we need one another. And I,
Absolutely.
I love doing this work because it continues to heal me. Every time I do the quantum living process, by the way, when everybody brings up their issues, I'm like, oh my God, that's one of mine too. And so I
Well,
get
your clients tend to be a mirror of something that's going on within you.
absolute.
I get the same thing. I'm like, oh, I'm going through this right now myself. And it doesn't make us any less of a good healer or, an assistant to our clients for them to heal. It just helps to bring us onto a higher level than we were on before we met with that client.
Absolutely. One of the best compliments I ever got from a client was she said, you're not like other teachers who try to impart your wisdom on us. You
Hmm.
walk beside us so we can see our own wisdom. And I went, hey, best thing anybody has ever said. I
Beautiful.
love that. And that's the whole idea behind the program. It's like, yeah, I'm a lot older than I look even, but I have a lot of wisdom and I've gone through a lot over the years and I've learned and I've looked at how it's affected my life. And so I can share that. But I can, not look down on someone who's struggling with some of the things that I've been through. It's just amazing what we can
Yeah,
do to support one another. And healing happens in community. It
it does.
always, we can't do it alone. So,
Well, I think we can learn to heal ourselves, but I think we need guidance in order to do that.
right.
Um,
And even though I'm teaching the inner compass and inner guidance, one of the gifts of my years in the convent was studying Ignatian discernment. It's Saint
mhm.
Ignatius, and he talked about like how do you know that you really have come to truth? The inner compass is it's tricky because we all have, I think, at least two voices in our head, sometimes more. One of my teachers teaches that we have a barking dog and a spirit that speaks to us. And
I say we have our ego and our higher self.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And her analogy is kind of fun. She names
Yep.
the barking dog, but it also pictures, the discernment sometimes is to check with other people,
It
not
is.
am I right or am I wrong, but we get good feedback on really listening. Are we really hearing? And there
Yeah.
are times we don't. I mean, when a number of years ago, I was living in an apartment. It was a lovely apartment, and they were about to raise our rent $200 a month. And so I went to bed thinking, this doesn't make sense. I should go buy a condo. Now, the truth was, I didn't have the money to go do it at the time, but everything in me said, that's your next step. So I went ahead. I booked an appointment with a realtor. I went to look at places. I did all of the things you do. And most of my friends said, not you're crazy because they know me well enough. They're like, we're wondering how you're going to pull this one off. And I pull it off not because I'm doing magic, but because I trust that voice that says to go ahead.
Yeah.
And what happened in that one was a real miracle. I had a friend who I have never met. He lives in Canada. He's a married man. It's not, it's just a friendship. And I was telling him about this thought that I had, and he said, you know what? We have money and equity in our house. Let me give you the money for the down payment, and you can pay me back later.
Wow.
I mean, now really, Tanya, that's not something I would have ever asked anybody to do. We're talking significant, and I had never borrowed money from anybody. And so I let him do it, and I had paid him back. It was just, and I was able to find the perfect place, and I'm now living in this condo that I bought. And, it was really a matter of the discernment. My friends were trying to say, have a backup plan in case it
Right.
doesn't work.
Right.
I don't believe in backups. When I believe something, I mean, I'll tell you another extraordinary story. Many years ago, I was a minister in a church in California, and I read an email about an opening of one of the largest churches in our movement in Sarasota, Florida. And everything in me said, oh, that's your next step. So you're going to
Moved to
let
Sarasota, Florida.
this is amazing. I literally put my house on the market and gave notice in my job before I went for the interview.
Wow.
I was that clear. It was
Yeah.
just, oh, all right, that's my next step. And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is, it's a long, crazy story about how that one happened, but I did get the job and they moved me from California to Florida. And
Wow.
it's, I have learned over the years to trust that, and it's not just a passing thought, oh, that would be nice.
Right.
It kind of grabs your life and says, this is it, do this. And everybody has those insights. Most people don't trust them.
Well, they're taught to not listen to themselves. I'm guessing that some of that bearing of your inner self that happened while you were with the church also happened when you were a child. Because our parents tend to say, I know what's best for you. Listen to me. I did the same thing to my kids. Because they get to a point where I think it's like between 12 and 14, they start to really pull away. And that's when we need to start letting them make some of their own internal decisions. And if we don't know how to tap into our own intuition, how can we teach our children to tap into their own intuition? And so it's is did you find that there were a lot of things from your childhood that just kind of continued through to you going to the church and,
I think definitely. And today I was on another podcast with someone who said Rockefeller created the school system
yep.
in such a way that students had to raise their hands, you couldn't speak, you didn't know. Um, I remember teaching a math class and telling the students, you know, the students had all learned you cover your papers, you don't share anything. And I said to them, life isn't like that. Life lets you ask questions of other people. So we're going to take a test and you can use anything you need. I want you to know that no one in that class looked up beyond their own papers. I was right there. They could have asked me for the answer, I would have given it to them. And
Right.
nobody did. And so I wound up writing an article called Learning to Cheat. And the idea was, we need to learn to ask for help because these same people graduate and go off to business and they're told to work in a team and they have
Hmm.
no clue how to work with anybody else
Right.
because they're still covering their papers. So it's an idea of like, you know, it's not safe to think for it's not safe to ask anybody else, but it's also not safe to think for yourself. And
Hmm.
I grew up with the children should be seen and not heard. I
Yep.
mean, all of us, which means, my little mind had loads of ideas and nobody wanted to hear them at the time. So after a while, you shut them off. I
Yeah.
think that's what happens. And if you go back to the Enneagram, every personality does it differently.
Hmm.
Like some of them are perfectionists because they learned that there was a right way of doing things. And in their home, they were taught there was a right way. And so they're always looking for that right way and they're looking for it in you and they're correcting you. And it's a real challenge. And then there are those who think that everybody else comes first, so they take care of everybody else, or those who think that I have to succeed by being whatever anybody else wants me to be.
Hmm.
We learn. I give a signature talk called The Vows We All Take. And I may have taken a vow in a convent, but everyone takes vows.
Oh yeah.
It's that we have unconscious beliefs that
Yep.
we take on, and we shut out that voice, and it's really powerful when you start to learn to listen. And
Yeah.
I teach people For example, I had a client who came and said, I'm thinking of changing jobs, but it would require a move and I don't know. And I was like, how does it feel in your body? And he said, I have this profound sense of peace. There's your answer.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we listen? We don't know how to listen to our own inner being, our body, our guts tell us all the time, and we need to train ourselves to learn to listen.
So
So,
what are three small steps that the listeners can start using to help them tap into their inner self?
I guess the first one is to discern the two different voices. If you want the angel, the devil, the barking dog, and to start noticing when the voice is loud and screaming at you and say you should or shouldn't, that's not your inner voice. So
Mhm.
it's as simple and profound as that. We don't train ourselves. Second thing, I'd like to teach a practice that I do every single day, and it's called the presence practice. And it's a 7-minute practice, so everybody can find time. You spend 2 minutes getting in touch with what's going on in my body. So you feel your breathing, you feel any tingling, any sensation, just being aware of sensations, which, by the way, is the only way we can live in the present. So we're right there. And when we do that, our heart kind of comes online and it starts reminding of us of what's important. And we have this sense of tenderness about ourselves and everyone else. And then when both of those things get in sync, so we spend 2 minutes in the body, 2 minutes in the heart, and then the head gets actually quiet.
Mhm.
There may be chatter going on, but there's a silence behind it. And so we begin to listen to that silence and we see possibilities and visions, and the higher mind begins to speak for 2 minutes. And then we connect all three. So we then have a absolute knowing that we are just one person. So all three of those centers of one. That practice is something that I do every morning, first thing after coffee. And then also during the day, I sometimes don't take a full 7 minutes, but if I find myself off for anything, I
Mhm.
just do it quickly. And for me, that's the practice when people learn to live in the presence, they really can listen to themselves much more fully. Um, the third one might be simply the question of asking, um, can I doubt my doubts? What if my doubt wasn't true?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
and just asking that, can I doubt my doubts? And so those three are simple ways. Yeah, I have a 6-month program that takes a lot longer ways, but that can get people started. And when they do start, especially the presence practice,
Yeah.
I teach that to everyone I meet because it's so profound and so simple,
Yeah.
and it really it gets you grounded and gets
I
you
love that.
starting to listen.
I love that that's part of the practice is bringing people into the now, because when we worry too much about the future, that's when anxiety creeps in. And that's when you can ask that question, how can I doubt my doubts?
Yep,
And when you're
exactly.
thinking too much about the past, that's where the sadness and depression will start to creep in, and coming back into the present moment. None of that matters
You
because
know, Tanya, I've never heard anybody else say that. I used to teach that all the time. When you're depressed, it's because you're living in the past, and when
yeah,
you're in anxiety, you're living in the future. So the only way to let go of all of that, and it's a constant practice. It's not
it
like,
is.
you'll all of a sudden get it and your life will be perfect. It continue, but the more you practice, the more, I mean, this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but a couple of months ago, I fell and broke my ankle, and it was the worst pain I have ever experienced. And after screaming, my first thought was, what's the gift here?
Mm,
And and it made me laugh. And I thought, all these years of practice is working because I don't have to look at the negative and what's going wrong. I can always be looking for the gift. And
right,
when that's another thing that I teach people, life never is happening to you, it's happening for you.
right, right.
You
Yeah,
know,
and one thing that I think the listeners need to always remember is that we're human. We're here to have a human experience. We're here to have all the feelings, to go through all the trials and tribulations, to enjoy all the joy and happiness that comes into our lives. We're going to get all of it. It's about becoming aware of how our body is responding to these things. And that sounds like something that you teach in your program.
yeah, absolutely. It
Yeah.
sounds like we do some of the same things, which
Yeah.
is kind of exciting to realize that there are that many people around the world. Like I've been
Yeah.
on podcasts all over the world, and people are teaching these principles. And I had a 94-year-old woman take many of my classes, and when she took the quantum living class and started studying some of these principles, she said to me, "This is the answer to peace on earth. It really
It
is."
is. It
It's
really is.
exciting.
I yeah, I often say I think our purpose during this human experience is to find happiness in the lives that we're already living. And that doesn't mean that we ignore the negative or the bad things that happen because that is how we grow. How we handle those things is how we grow and mature and those kinds of things. But what if our main purpose is to just find happiness within the life that we're already living?
It's fun. I've been playing a computer game lately that throws in these phrases every now and then. And the one that's come up this week more than once is the whole purpose of our life is to find happiness. So
Synchronicities.
I'm supposed to be hearing that for some reason today. It's wonderful. And it really is. I think the Dalai Lama even wrote a book that the purpose of our life is
Yep.
happiness. And, we lose it because we get so caught up in what's not working rather
Right.
than what is working. And,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I was born with my personality, and I feel a lot of compassion for the people who live with the shoe dropping,
Mm-hmm.
what ifs
Because
and
we've all been there. We've
yep,
been there before.
yeah,
And we were able we found our way around it. Sometimes the shoe still drops, but we just handle it, we just respond to it differently instead of reacting.
exactly, exactly. So we can learn and I think it's just learning some of these principles that know that life is a gift. I mean, I think it was Einstein who said the one question to ask is the universe a friendly place? And if you believe it's a friendly place, then you believe that good is happening at all times,
Yeah.
regardless of what the news says, regardless of all the things going on that are less than perfect.
Yep.
It's quite interesting. But
Yeah.
I'm grateful. I'm very grateful, and I'm ecstatic that I get to live this teaching and teach it all the time. This is what I get to share and do for a living. It's like so many people are hating what they do, and I'm like, I would do my job even if no one paid me. But
Yep.
please, you can pay me.
Right, but please pay me.
But it's true. It's like,
Yeah, we still have to live and survive. So, yeah,
mhm, mhm.
absolutely. Toni, where can people find you to work with you?
The best thing to do is just go to my website, tonilamotta.com, and I'll spell it Toni, I'm a woman, LAMOTTA.com. And when somebody signs up on my mailing list, I send a quiz about how well are you listening to your inner compass. And so people are kind of surprised or delighted when they take that little quiz and then can decide where they want to go from there. And lots of other work that they can do with me.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that will be all in the show notes. So make sure you guys go to her website, check her out. Toni, is there anything else that you would like the listeners to know about or hear before we end the conversation?
I guess, one of the things I like to tell people is to take life a little more lightly. I think so many people today are into worry and fear and doubt. And it's like, how can you smile a little more? What can you do? And one of my spirit guides happens to be a joy guide and always brings some kind of delight and joy into my life. And I just want to share that joy with everybody else too. That's, life is meant to be happy. So
It is. Toni, thank you so much.
delightful. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I hope today's episode brought you inspiration, joy, and a spark of empowerment. Remember, transformation is an incredible journey, and every single step you take towards self-care and healing brings you closer to the life you truly desire. If this episode uplifted you, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us to share this journey of hope, resilience, and joy with many listeners. For more tips, support, and inspiration, come and visit us at designyourexistence.com. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep shining brightly. You are absolutely worth every bit of love and care you give to yourself. Take care, stay joyful, and be well.